So welcome to our latest Google Hangout during the Combine coverage on Seahawks Draft Blog. Today was supposed to be a very intriguing day. And in many ways it was, just not quite in the way that I think many of us expected. I think the Combine after 3 days has confirmed a lot of what we thought coming into the event. For example, we now have some clarity that the best positions in the draft seem to be interior offensive line, running back, plus there will be a collection of early round linebackers. We also now have some confirmation that it's a bit of an underwhelming receiver and tight end class with minimal first round possibilities at either position. Maybe one or two receivers are going to go in the first round. Mike Gesicki from Penn State, the tight end, was a rare surprise over the weekend with the way that he performed. Has probably boosted his stock. Could be somebody, I have no idea where he's going to go in the draft. Could be the first round, could be the second, could be the third. But the way that he tested yesterday, a bit of a surprise will boost his stock. But apart from that, no major surprises. And we now know that the D-line options, I think, are probably going to be more appealing to a team like the Seahawks in the mid to late rounds than they are going to be in that first round, number 18, or if they trade down, which suggests the Seahawks are probably better off focusing on their running game early and looking at the hole at left guard and the great options at running back. I think more than ever, having witnessed what we saw today between the defensive linemen and the linebackers, I think more than ever that the likes of Isaiah Wynn, Will Hernandez, and Billy Price are appealing as offensive linemen, as are Nick Chubb, Kerryon Johnson, and Ronald Jones II at running back. And if they wanted to take another running back later on in round 4 or 5, given that it's probably the strength of the draft, a John Kelly at Tennessee or Bo Scarborough at Alabama, for example, it's not going to be a waste of resources, especially with the focus that Pete Carroll wants to put in his running game. I still think that that is the direction the Seahawks will be better off going for. We'll see how free agency impacts that, but that's kind of the thinking I've got based on what we've seen so far with just 1 day to go with the defensive backs to come. Today, though, I want to focus on the D-line and the linebackers and run through some thoughts based on the workouts today. I thought it was a bit surprising to see a drop in explosive defensive linemen this year. When I was putting together the review piece, I actually kind of map out certain things that you're going to talk about before the combine works out. It just saves a bit of time when the workouts are concluded and you want to get on with the review piece. And I was automatically expecting there to be about 25 to 30 explosive defensive linemen, because that is what we've seen for the last 2 years. So to find there was only 22 in total, but only 14 with bona fide scores, because 8 of the people that we tested for TEF scored a 3.00 or more based on a projection, because they didn't do the bench press. So the only way we can actually give them a score is to give them the average number of reps that a defensive lineman has done in combine history, which was 24, and then make up the score. So around 22 in total, but 14 for sure explosive defensive linemen, which was a major drop on the 30 that we had a year ago and 26 the year before. It was also a bit disappointing to see no noticeable headlines amongst the agility testing as well, the short shuttle and the 3-cone. Sam Hubbard ran the 6th best 3-cone by a defensive lineman in the last 10 years, which was a bit of a surprise, admittedly. But other than that, the results were pretty average across the board. Leighton Van Der Esch can be pleased with his 3-cone and his short shuttle. He's likely going to go in the top 22 as a consequence now. His stock is trending a certain way. He may even go in the top 15 with the way that it's going. But there was no Bruce Irvin, for example, running a 4.030 short shuttle, or there was no Frank Clark running a 4.05 short shuttle. There was no Cliff Averill running a 150 10-yard split. We'll come on to the splits again in a moment. Only 4 linemen I can see here ran a sub-7-second 3-cone, including Hubbard, including Harold Landry. And the best testers in the short shuttle who were Landry, Kylie Fitz, Dorrance Armstrong, Arden Key, and Josh Sweat. Well, they posted good times, but not sensational times. None of them posted that Frank Clark or that Bruce Irvin time there. So you were just left wanting more from what we saw at the combine today, in my opinion. Only 2 edge rushers ran a 1.5 10-yard split. 1.5 is considered an elite time for an edge rusher, a lighter player. So Harold Landry and Josh Sweat both ran a 1.5. Lorenzo Carter might be another name that we can add to the list to make it 3, but for some reason the NFL Network, despite publishing the 10-yard splits for both of the defensive lineman groups, didn't post the 10-yard splits for when the linebackers ran, even though there were people like Lorenzo Carter and Kamoko Torre who were edge prospects really that were just working out with the linebackers. That was disappointing to see. Of the bigger defensive linemen, a 1.6 10-yard split is considered pretty good. And there were some encouraging signs here, admittedly. This was better news. Taven Bryan ran a 1.68. Rasheem Green, 1.66. Deron Payne, a 1.67. Jalen Holmes could be an option for the Seahawks from Ohio State, 1.67. And Kentavius Street and Breland Speaks both running a 1.67 as well. For a point of comparison, a year ago, Malik McDowell, who was Seattle's first pick in the draft eventually at the top of round 2, was praised for running a 1.69 at 295 pounds. So all of those names that I've just read out for you ran a quicker 10-yard split than Malik McDowell, and they were all in a similar weight. So McDowell was 295 pounds, Taven Bryan 291, Deron Payne ran a quicker time despite being, I think 16 pounds heavier than Malik McDowell. So very impressive from him. Jalen Holmes is 283 pounds, Kentavious Street 280, Brilliant Speaks 283. So they're lighter than Malik McDowell, but not a big difference. So some positivity amongst that group there based on how they ran. Taven Bryan had a very, very explosive performance, a quick workout. I think you can really sort of say that he was one of the big winners of the day. He's confirmed for me his status as a first-round pick. He's still got a long way to go. It might take him a year to really understand what a defense wants him to do and to discover some pass rushing ability apart from just a bull rush and a quick get off. He needs to work with his hands a little bit more and show that he can play inside and out. But I think he's one of the big winners today for the way that he tested with speed and with explosion. Some of the other headlines there, Ade Aruna, who is a player that a lot of people will know about, smaller school prospect, and was expected to have a really strong 2017 and maybe be a bit of a sleeper who could go in the first 3 rounds, but it never really happened for him. He got injured, had some rough games as well. I think he's probably going to go in the very later rounds, even go undrafted, but has shown that there's some physical potential there and somebody will want to work with him as a prospect in training camp. Some of the other names that I think Bradley Chubb and Marcus Davenport really cemented their stock. They didn't do anything to hurt themselves. So Bradley Chubb's going to go in the top 6. Marcus Davenport's probably going to go in the top 20, and I think that's pretty secure now. Harrison Phillips is a top 100 pick, and I think that he showed enough this weekend to maybe move himself. I know some people put him in the back end of the first round. I think he's very much a late second, early third round pick, and what he showed today didn't really change any of that. I don't want to just focus on the way that the workouts went as well, though. I think that the drills are important with the defensive lineman because someone like Tim Settle, for example, is never going to go to the combine and just wow you with his 40-yard dash or his agility tests. But you do want to see a guy who is 329 pounds moving around the field and looking really strong and productive. And that is what we saw from Tim Settle. And he wasn't alone at all. Deron Payne looked really good in drills, ran a good 10-yard split. Tim Settle was moving around superbly. Justin Jones and BJ Hill looked really good in the drills. I thought that Taven Bryan looked good in the drills. Rasheem Green, Derek Nardi, again, is another player like Tim Settle, really big. He's not going to stand out when you look at a spreadsheet with all the numbers there and the size and the speed and everything like that. You're not going to go, wow, this guy's a first-round pick. He's probably not going to go that early. But watching the way that he went through the drills looked really good today. And I thought Nathan Shepard, another small school prospect, was one of the other better players who really showed up at the combine today. In his drills, in his performance, I kind of hope that the Seahawks are not as tied to 33-inch armed defensive linemen as much as we think they are. They've never taken a defensive lineman with a sub-32-inch arm length. Nathan Shepard, I think, has got sort of 32.5-inch arms, so it will be disappointing if he's off the radar as a consequence, because I think at the Senior Bowl, before he got injured, and at the Combine, he has looked really, really good, Nathan Shepard, and someone to keep an eye on. At the linebacker position, Lorenzo Carter has done what he needed to do. At the Spark Combine in, I think it was 2014 when he worked out, he ran I think it was a 4.64, but was really explosive, ran a jumped to 40-inch vertical. Here, only managed a 38.5-inch vertical, which is pretty similar, but ran a 4.50 official, which is really good. You know, assuming that he's got a good 10-yard split, and you have to at a 4.50 at his size. He's a potential Sam Leo candidate. He's probably one of the few, maybe even the only one who is from this draft class. And if the Seahawks do acquire picks early whether it's the early second round or the late first round, if they do get some extra picks there, if they do make a trade or two in free agency to acquire extra stock, Lorenzo Carter could be somebody that they have a real long look at. In terms of other linebackers, I thought Matthew Thomas at Florida State had a really good performance. Might be a name to monitor. Ran a 4.57, jumped to 41.5-inch vertical, 10.11 broad. He's got good size, 6'2", 232 pounds. Is certainly going to be somebody that I go and have a look at after the combine. Has had some issues in the past at Florida State, but could be somebody that they just think, yeah, we know we can work with this guy, and he's got the potential there, the athletic potential there to warrant some consideration in the pros. Josh Sweat was fantastic. You know, just running through his profile. You know, he's nearly 6'5", 251 pounds, huge hands, arm length is nearly 35 inches, a wingspan of 84 and 1/8 inches, which is just incredible. There just aren't many human beings like Josh Sweat. And watching him running the 40-yard dash, he didn't do any of the drills, but watching him run the 40, there was not a better looking prospect at the combine this weekend. 1.5 10-yard split, as you've mentioned, 4.5 40, 39.5-inch vertical, 10.4 broad. He's got an injury history, and that has to be considered. As a consequence, he's probably going to go in the middle rounds. I would think about round 3 or round 4 would be a fair range for Josh Sweat. But if the Seahawks are looking for defensive line talent that they can mold and have got the potential to be great, Josh Sweat has certainly got that. Shaquem Griffin, we've got to talk about him as well. You know, the talk of the combine, the talk of Twitter and social media as well. Everybody's falling in love with him. Every fan of every team is going to be wanting their team to draft Shaquem Griffin after what we saw. I know this is going to come up in the Q&A, so I'm not going to talk too much about the on-field stuff until I get to the Q&A. But what I will say is that if you are having a miserable day, if you are having a lousy day, or if it's raining outside, just listen to Shaquem Griffin do an interview, and he just immediately just brightens everything up. You feel a lot more positive about everything. So he's such an engaging character. He's the grittiest player in the NFL draft this year, of course. And I can imagine the Seahawks being very, very interested in him. But I'm going to talk about his role a little bit later on when we get to the Q&A. There's still a couple of other things I want to touch on. The hamstring injuries is something that we have to talk about. There's been too many at the combine, and it really is something the NFL needs to review and have a look at. I don't remember watching a combine where there have been so many people injured running the 40-yard dash, particularly on their first 40-yard dash. So what is the problem here? Are they not warming up properly? Is there too much going on in the morning of the combine? Is there too much in the preparation? We saw Shaquem Griffin cramping up during his workout as well. As the pressure of the moment becomes just too much, where people are really tight and are pulling muscles as they're running. I mean, what is the reason for this? It's something the NFL has to look at, because just the big names off the top of my head, Vita Vea, Ronald Jones II, Roquan Smith, all injured themselves during the first 40-yard dash and then didn't do any of the drills or any of the jumps as a consequence, which was really disappointing. And then there was a load of others as well. You know, Contavious Street had that problem. There were countless others. There was a good 4 or 5 others who injured themselves and then didn't do any of the workouts with hamstring issues. So something wasn't right there, and it's something that the NFL has got to go and have a look at. I think the only other couple of things I want to touch on very quickly, Jeff Holland didn't run particularly well, with someone we've talked about on the blog, but a 9.8 broad jump hints at some explosive traits. In comparison, Tremaine Edmonds just jumped to 9.9, so very similar in terms of explosive qualities there. Malik Jefferson, unsurprisingly, tested as well as expected, 36-inch vertical, 10.10 broad. Micah Kaiser worked out as well as a little bit better than expected, 35.5-inch vertical, 10.1 broad, very, very intense physical linebacker. A lot of teams, I think, in the AFC North are probably going to look at him. And Dorian O'Daniel, who made some plays for Clemson during the season, was one of the more underrated players on that defense, with a 4.07 short shuttle. Is the 6th best by a linebacker in the last 5 years. You would have hoped for a better 40-yard dash time. Is about 225 pounds. He only ran a 4.61, but a 4.07 short shuttle is good news there. And I know a lot of teams are thinking he might be a safety at the next level. And well, you know, linebackers who convert to safety from teams in the Virginia and Carolina area are players that the Seahawks have had some success with in the past. So Dorian O'Daniel might be a player to look at there. Right, on to the Q&A. Just a few questions for now. It's a little bit quicker than some of the other videos we've done in the past, but this is a question from Forrest. Who do you think is the most likely early round offensive lineman and running back combo for Seattle? Also, where would you project Shaquem Griffin in Seattle's defensive system? So on the first part, Forrest, I think that the names that we've talked about a lot, you know, Will Hernandez has not got the 33-inch arms, but they did draft Joey Hunt, who had very short arms a few years ago, so that might not be quite as much of an issue for them. And Will Hernandez was fantastic at the combine on Friday, was fantastic at the Senior Bowl, was explosive as well. For me, has worked his way into the latter part of the first round, so I think that he has to be a consideration there. I love Isaiah Wynn. I think that he's Zach Martin. I think he's that kind of player, moving from left tackle to left guard, who's going to be a Pro Bowler most years and is going to have a really solid career. So I think Wynn, Hernandez. Price's injury makes it a little bit harder to judge him. 32-inch arms, not great. I do think he can play guard, but I do think his best position is center. And if they want a pure guard, for example, Hernandez and Wynn maybe make a little bit more sense there. But, you know, I think those three there. And the running backs, I think you're looking at Nick Chubb. I think you're looking at Kerryon Johnson. You're looking at Ronald Jones II. They're the three that I would focus on probably the most in the early rounds, although I wouldn't completely rule out Penny and Freeman and Geis and others as well. And then later on, you've got people like John Kelly and Bo Scarborough. It's hard to sort of just single two out there and say who is the most likely, because I can see the Seahawks in the way that I kind of, back in 2011, talked a lot about James Carpenter that year playing as a left tackle and what he did in the run game and how much I liked him. And then they did draft him at number 25 overall and moved him to guard. So I could see them looking at Isaiah Wynn, not the greatest tester, and Carpenter wasn't either, but just looking at the way that he blocks technically and thinking, this is a guy that we can really work with here. So I think there's a chance that they could really like him. But then I also think the physicality and the size and the tenacity of Will Hernandez is something that they could really look for there. So I can see either of those two players. And in terms of the running backs, I can see reasons for the Seahawks liking all of them. For example, Ronald Jones II, you could pair him with Chris Carson. You could pair him with someone like Carlos Hyde, for example, or a Jonathan Stewart if you pick them up in free agency. I could imagine Kerryon Johnson is a fantastic, underrated player. I could imagine them looking at what he did for Auburn in leading that team into national championship contention, taking them to the SEC championship, the defense working hand in hand with Kerryon Johnson in the running game. Just a very physical player, clearly very explosive, that 14-inch vertical as well. So, I could see the Seahawks really liking him. And Nick Chubb's pretty much the prototype for what they have gone for in terms of his size, his explosive nature, his tone setting, his running style. I can make a really strong case for any of those guys. I mean, they're the names that I would really focus on there. And as for Shaquem Griffin, where would it project him in Seattle's defensive system? We also had a similar question from Kenny, who said, could you talk about maybe where Shaquem Griffin could play in our 4-3 under? He's good on the line, but I haven't seen enough of to see if it's a liability. I haven't really seen a good schematic tangent on him. So the opinion that I have on Shaquem Griffin is that when he has played at linebacker, there is an awful lot to like. He's a terrific blitzer, makes a lot of plays blitzing, not a big surprise with his speed. I mean, we all saw Shaquille Griffin have the sack, I think it was against Dallas towards the end of the year. And that's kind of what his brother brings as a linebacker, as a terrific blitzer and loves to get into the backfield and do that. You see intensity, you see range as you'd expect. You see him, playing with great tenacity on the defense. And I think that whoever drafts him is going to have a great gritty character who can be a personality for that team. So that's what you're getting with him there. I think there are some issues though. I think that he really struggles to set the edge against the run, which is going to be really important for if he's going to play, for example, the Sam in Seattle or the Will, then that's going to be an issue and teams might target him in the running game. And we know how dedicated the Seahawks are to defending the run, and this could be a bit of an issue, unfortunately, for him. And there's nothing you can do about it, but you are at a disadvantage when you only have one hand, when you're trying to set the edge against the run. You've just got to get both hands in there and jam, and you've got to be able to do that and then disengage and make the play. And it's going to be a little bit harder for him. And as a consequence of that, he's probably not going to be able to be an every down linebacker. Now, for Seattle, they haven't been playing an every down Sam. They've been playing Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright for a lot of the snaps. They've been mixing between an extra defensive back, Justin Coleman or Jeremy Lane, for example, in the slot. Braggy McDougal played some big nickel very rarely. It has to be said in 2017, but they did use him there. And if they wanted to use Griffin in a more of a spot duty role as a Sam who comes onto the field for certain downs, maybe gets after the quarterback on a blitz, maybe it's third down and long, and you want someone who's got a bit of range there, can drop and cover, but can also rush the passer as well. Maybe that's how they would use it. But I think that's his role. And this is why some of the talk tonight that, he's going to go in the first round, or he's going to go in the second round because he ran a 4.38. We do need to have some realism and some perspective here. I think the way that he's performed today at the Combine and everything that he's shown to get to this stage in his career has possibly put him in the third, fourth round range. Possibly. But there are limitations to what he can do. And, that's not being disrespectful. I love Shaquem Griffin as much as everybody else. But you have to be a bit realistic. He's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be an every down linebacker. Now, if he achieves that in his career, I'll be the first one to my hands and say I got that completely wrong, as many people have got things wrong about Shaquem Griffin during his career. But you have to be honest about how you see him fitting in. And I see him fitting in as somebody who is a situational linebacker who can maybe play some safety, or can be tried there as well, given his speed. But he's probably a linebacker. Is going to be fantastic on special teams, and that's a huge value as well. And is going to be an incredible presence in that locker room, is going to give you the right kind of attitude, is going to be gritty, is going to be a leader, and he's going to be incredibly valuable for your team. But I don't think he's going to play every down. So that limits his stock a little bit. And I do think as a situational linebacker, that was what his role would be in Seattle. Kenny has also asked, Rob, in your Google Hangouts, would you bring up any smaller school standouts you might not have noticed otherwise? Well, the two that have really stood out, I think, are Ade Aruna, who had a really good testing session here. We've talked a little bit about him already, and Nathan Shepard, who we've already talked about as well. I think there are not a cluster of smaller school players who are really jumping out here, and you're thinking, well, the Seahawks going to take these guys early. I think we're talking about Shepard as a mid-round pick, possibly Aruna as a late-round pick, undrafted free agent who's got some talent. They're the two, Kenny, that I've really noticed the most. We'll dig into it. We'll look at the combine results, and we'll go back to that's the great thing about the combine. You look at the numbers there, and then you go back and see it and say, this player looks interesting. I want to go and watch him for the first time. And we'll certainly do that, and that might involve some smaller school guys. But I think Aruna and Shepard are the two at the moment to focus on there. And Peter says, Josh Sweat basically getting medical clearance. What round would you see a fit for him in Seattle with a probable loss of Averill and others? If people miss this, Josh Sweat's injury history was a bit of a worry there, but in the medical rechecks, I think it was revealed today that there was nothing serious. I think the doctors have a way of describing it, like I think they say that it's not a major issue, or it's not fantastic, but it's not bad. It's kind of like ordinary medical condition. I think the injuries that he's had, he's not got a glowing bill of health, but he's not seen as a problem either. So I think given what he's shown today and the way that he runs and the unique size that he's got, and his tape was a little bit frustrating at Florida State, but you do see flashes of brilliance there. I think what we're talking about with him is third, fourth round. That's a comfortable range for him. You know, you see people without the injury histories who also looked really great as pass rushers, people like Jordan Willis a year ago, Justin Houston at Kansas City, was at Georgia. You know, these are players that went in round 3 that didn't have the injury history and have gone on, especially in Houston's case, to have a really good career. So I would think that Sweat's probably in the third round, fourth round range, and the Seahawks might consider him there. You know, they have to find some pass rushing options from somewhere, and options are going to emerge. I think it's been talked about that Vinny Curry might be leaving the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, there are players that you don't consider who could come to Seattle and provide some options there as pass rushers if they do lose Cliff Averill, if they do lose Michael Bennett, for example. But Sweat is somebody that I think they will keep an eye on, and someone that we need to keep an eye on, and he could be there in the third or fourth round range. So that's where we're going to wrap up the video for tonight. What we're going to do is come back tomorrow. We've got the defensive back drills, some interesting prospects to look at there in the safety class. I think a couple of names to keep an eye on, in particular, Jesse Bates, the third, the Wake Forest safety, could propel himself into the top 50 picks with a really good workout. As Tony Pauline has linked him to the Seahawks, having some interest in him as well. If they trade Earl Thomas, they're probably going to need to bring in a free safety at some point. So he's someone to keep an eye on. And Justin Reed's the other player to keep an eye on. Eric Reed's brother, the San Francisco 49ers safety, who went in the first round, number 18 overall pick in 2013. We know that he's explosive, 40-inch vertical. He did that at the Spark Combine. We know he's got the bloodlines. We know that they really like him at Stanford. And I know that people believe that he's better in space. If he has a really good performance, really good 40-yard dash tomorrow, he's somebody who could work his way into the late first round, early second round. So there are two names to keep an eye on amongst the Minka Fitzpatricks and the Derwin Jameses and the Denzel Wards that are going to be working out tomorrow. And of course, we're going to keep an eye on those 32-inch armed cornerbacks and see if there's anybody in day 3 who might be a target for the Seahawks as well, because they're probably going to take a cornerback at some point. They usually do in day 3, round 5, round 6. We'll see if there's any options there. So thank you for watching this video. If you like it, press the little thumbs up button if you're on YouTube. Let me know what you think in the comments section if you want me to continue doing these videos. I know a few people have been very positive about them so far. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate your support as well on Patreon, and really enjoying the talk and the conversation we have in the comment section. A really great community who are respectful of each other and their views. We can disagree at times, but I just love the way that we can talk football, and we avoid some of the stuff that you get on Twitter and other forums as well. And we keep it kind of adult in the comment section. So I appreciate all of that. Last day of the combine workouts tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Hope you'll stick with us on Seahawks Draft Blog. We'll have the live blog as usual, and then we'll have the review at the end of the day as well. So until then, see you soon.